So to just carry on with this unit, I think when we look at organizational architecture, in particular around structure and systems, traditionally in organizations, what we did is we divided labor into those functional areas: marketing separate, finance separate from HR, etc., etc. There are three options to, however, divide our organization into subcomponents. We could look at skill or expertise, and we know that a marketer is trained very different to a finance, to an HR, etc. Or we could look at sequencing and how we put the elements of value creation together. The most obvious way of sequencing is your traditional production line, part A, part B, and components move through that process. The third thing we need to ask is how much authority, how much do we empower employees to take decisions? Is it centralized, or do we move it down the organization? And as I said in the previous recording, to where people are able to take the decisions that affect their lives at work. So traditional organizational structures, I'm not going to go through them. You can have a glance at those examples on that particular page. Functional approach: marketing separate from finance, separate from HR, etc. Divisional approach, where you'll, under Toyota, have a trucking division, you'd have a light delivery vehicle division, you would have a motor vehicle division. South African breweries, you had South African Breweries Africa, and then different regions in terms of their divisions. The matrix approach is an interesting approach in that it allows for dual reporting lines. So it allows you to report vertically to your functional head. So if you, this person one here, you generally would be some sort of marketing expert. You would report in terms of your roles through to your director marketing. But what this does in terms of horizontal reporting is that in addition to being responsible to your functional head, and I'm just going to use that term, the director HR, the director marketing, the director finance, you're also expected to work on different project teams. We know that modern organizations are project-based, and by working on these projects, you can deal with issues as and when they become important, and it builds in an element of flexibility into your structure. So horizontally, you will report to a project manager, but vertically, you still are responsible to your line manager. I think other options in terms of modern organizations is this idea of outsourcing. When we think of outsourcing, what outsourcing does, it allows us to stay with our core business. So Varsity College, Pietermaritzburg, where I lecture most of my stuff face-to-face, Varsity College, Pietermaritzburg would have a core group of people. That would be the principal and the deputy principals, academic and marketing and operations, and those what we would refer to as full-time staff. Then what they do is they outsource non-core business issues. So we know that they've outsourced the garden service, they've outsourced the canteen, they've outsourced security, they've outsourced the cleaning services. And the thinking is very simple in terms of those outsourcing components, is that it allows the company, Varsity College in this instance, to focus on education. The thinking also is because you are outsourcing the canteen or the restaurant to a company that has as its core business canteens and restaurants, they would be far more efficient and effective at delivering those. The same with security. The core business of your security guys is security. So they will be a lot better at security than what Varsity College themselves can. In terms of assemblers, we know that components are manufactured elsewhere, and most large organizations, all your major car manufacturers, Dell computers, etc., are assemblers where they Lego block the bits together that come from their suppliers. Right, and there is an example of things that can be outsourced. Span of control, and I spoke about a narrow versus a wide span of control. Wide span of control goes hand in hand with a flat, flexible organization. Narrow span of control talks about this tall, skinny organization with lots of managers and fewer employees, where a wide span has few managers and many groups of employees working in teams, giving you a flat, flexible structure. So delegation of authority, really just putting employees in charge of those decisions that affect their lives at work. I think traditionally, if an employee in a very traditional organization, those tall, skinny, many reporting levels organizations had an idea, by the time that idea had got to a point where somebody can take a decision about it, because of broken telephones, the idea would have changed, but also it takes a lot of time, and that idea would be stale, and another competitor might be doing what that idea was already. So we give employees autonomy, we empower them to take decisions, and what it allows managers to do is to focus on the sort of strategic long-term vision stuff in the organization. It also, just in terms of countries that are democratic, takes the democracy into the workplace. In a country that's in a democratic nation, it's illogical not to have a democratic workforce. And then, yeah, we can start building careers for lower managers. But I think the most important thing is the people who do the work are the ones expected to innovate. The people who actually build the thing will have significant knowledge about those products and those services, and should be highly, highly innovative in those areas. Guys, and then disadvantages of delegation. Yeah, I think it puts a lot of pressure on employees. We know that employees already are under tremendous stress because of the nature of the environment. And sometimes managers might think that they're losing their authority and they don't want to hand it over. And managers might think that they don't use their skills. But I think the advantages out, outweigh the disadvantages. So, in terms of the paradigms in my model that we spoke about earlier, Newtonian traditional paradigm, slow moving environment creates a slow moving organization, tall, skinny, lots of reporting levels, very, very clear dividing lines between your functional areas, lots of bureaucracy. And then chaotic, this magic mix of order within chaos. And it really is about having some structure that is appropriate to the modern environment. The environment moves quickly, it changes rapidly. Your structure must do the same thing. So you need a flat, flexible, fast moving, very, very adaptable structure. And I think the interesting thing is that it uses teams, and that this paradigm morphs all the time to align itself with the realities of the environment. The one thing that binds everything together in this chaos that we have, and trying to order that chaos, is the vision. So the binding factor is a vision. And it again emphasizes the need for a powerful vision. And you can see the kinds of things that go hand in hand. The key word there for me is self-directed. And the self-directed element comes from the fact that employees form part of teams that take decisions that traditionally would have been taken by senior managers. guys, and then just delegation of authority. I think when we think of moving decision making and autonomy and authority and empower employees, what happens is you should have better levels of effectiveness. Effectiveness having to do with achieving. If you are effective, you build flawless products that impress your customers, that work first time, that are durable. Efficiency has to do with the amount of resources you use in achieving your objectives. So, efficient processes are those that achieve a lot but don't take a lot of resources. Gives us better quality, and employee productivity increases as well. So, to look at reward systems, the modern thinking in terms of reward systems is that it's not how much you actually pay an employee that matters, but rather how you pay the employee, how you structure the employee's salary. What do we do in terms of getting maximum tax benefits? What do we do in addressing particular needs for employees? What benefits do we add on in terms of creating our total salary package? So when we look at some of the rules, the first one is internal equitability. When we have something that's internally equitable, it means that we reward people for their contribution, and people doing the same thing will be rewarded in exactly the same way. And it's our salary systems. Now, some of you that are working will have heard of Patterson and Peromnes, and hey, those are traditional salary systems that reward people for decision making, for contribution, but it really is about making sure that in our structure that two people who do exactly the same thing are rewarded in exactly the same way. External, externally equitable means that we pay market related salaries. The job of a salary is to attract and retain and motivate. And you then have to be able to attract people from your competitors, but you also have to be able to keep them. And then in terms of the how we pay, that mix of finance and non-financial rewards. And I think also making sure that we acknowledge people who shoot the stars out, people who have significant achievements and contributions through incentives. And then performance related, again, those that link to your management by objectives. As people achieve those objectives, we need to make sure that there's a line of sight between that reward and that achieving the objective. So, in terms of the rules of supposedly strategically aligned reward systems, and can I just say, guys, every single part of this architecture has to be strategically aligned. So when we think of a reward that's strategically aligned, it immediately suggests that we are considering the vision and the mission statement and the long-term objectives and the value statement of the organization from a wealth creation perspective. But in particular, we look at making sure that we recognize performance. So it's not about arriving and sitting with your butt on a seat that gets you paid. It's about making a difference. The second one is executive level rewards. Executive level rewards have to do with the long-term successes of the organization, has to do with sustainability. So those are long-term incentives. Those long-term incentives essentially will attempt to keep your top managers in the organization. And then, yeah, it's that line of sight that I spoke about, the gap between the performance and the reward. The line of sight has to be very clear so people can see that if I display those behaviors, this will be my reward. And then, yeah, the most important in terms of a multicultural workforce, I think reward systems must make sense within the cultural context, within the country context that we provide them. And the biggest important, most significant rule of all of this is you don't reward mediocrity. If you reward mediocrity, you get more mediocrity. So it is to have a very clear sense of what we mean by top performance. We have to have a very, very clear sense of what we mean by success in an organization. And we need to reward behaviors that tie to performance, to top performance, to organizational success. Yeah. So to create the link between employees and the organization's vision, the process that we use for that is your performance management system. So what a performance management system does, it links individual behavior, individual contribution to the overall success of the organization. In terms of performance management systems, I think the first one is the actual function that they serve. The first one is that it's developmental. I think we want to reward people who are learning, and people who are learning are those individuals who are flexible, who remain relevant. I'm recording, okay. I'm recording this one. And then the second one, it's about evaluating, because we need to see whether people are making the contributions that we hire them for. So part of performance management is to evaluate, part of performance appraisal, the actual success, the actual contribution, the actual performance of individuals. The third one is about the efficacy of other HR processes. So what we do is we use performance management as a way of auditing our HR processes. If, for example, you hire a new group of employees and they underperform, it tells you that there's something wrong with your recruitment and selection processes. So we use it to audit recruitment and selection. If you send people on training programs and they still underperform, it tells you your training programs need to be revisited. So it allows us to check whether our HR processes are actually effective. We use it as an auditing mechanism. When we look at what we appraise, there are two of those. Now, the one thing that I always say to people is that you should only assess what people can control. You should only assess what employees actually can control, have the ability to control. So when we look at outcomes-based programs, where you look at achievements, I ran a course a number of years ago, and in this business school course, I had a group of Fuso salesmen. In 2007, just before the worldwide recession, they couldn't sell Fuso trucks quickly enough. They were constantly out of stock. These guys were rewarded for the stuff that moved out the door, and they were making a killing. In 2008, when the recession hit South Africa, they couldn't sell Fuso trucks if you actually paid customers to take it, because money was tight. Now, the problem with that is in 2007, they broke every bonus record ever. In 2008, they were impoverished, and they've done nothing different. The truth is, you cannot expect people to control the environment, the economic situation of a country. So in 2007, they lived like kings. In 2008, they lived like paupers. So when you reward deliverables, you must remember that you can only reward things that employees can control. Therefore, we look at process-based and process-based stuff. And process-based would be, in terms of those salespeople, the actual process that they engage customers with, how they follow up with customers, how they actually treat their customers, those things they can control. So what we do is we rather assess behavior than achievements, because we can't always control those achievements. And then, yeah, the rules from a performance management system. The first one, you must be able to assess people's performance. I think you can't just say that somebody is good, bad, indifferent. So what we do when you have a useless performance management system, we rate things like attitude and timekeeping, all rubbishy things. You need to find those behaviors that will predict higher levels of performance and find ways of evaluating those kind of behaviors. So you need to know what we understand as an organization to be the ideal behavior that would give you that performance. So you need to understand what we as an organization mean by performance. The second one is that the performance management system is also about keeping people on track. So when you see somebody just falling slightly behind, the job of a performance management system is to give feedback, is to update, so people constantly know what their expectations of them are. The truth is, no one should ever get a performance appraisal result that they're surprised at, because if they've not performed, they would have found out through the entire year that they're not performing. And then managers must rate. And I think what is left out there is objectivity, because you can't rate someone because you like them. You need to rate them on their contribution. And then remember, different cultures as well. Guys, and then, yeah, policies and procedures. What do policies do? Policies are guidelines, they're frameworks, they facilitate decision making. What we do and why we have policies is that we have recurring problems in an organization, and you don't want those problems to have to go through the entire decision making process. Therefore, we have policies around supply, policies around HR, policies in terms of finance. And then procedures, your standard operating procedures create consistency. So if you, for example, arrive to pay for your varsity college fees, there is a standard operating procedure that gets activated. You don't want people to have to think about it. It has to be automatic. And then also it allows us to create the right culture. If you think of what your disciplinary code can do as a policy in promoting the right behaviors. And then knowledge, skills, and attitudes. I think those basic knowledge, skills, and attitudes are the non-negotiables. You know, we need to be able to read, we need to be able to write, we need to do basic arithmetic. Specific knowledge and skills are those abilities that relate to putting together a marketing plan, putting together a PR program, doing a set of books, taking books all the way to your balance sheet. All those are specific job related, functional related skills. Distinctive competencies are those that make you unique. I watched the Formula One last night, and Max Verstappen somehow kept Lando Norris behind him in a less than effective car. And the only way Lando could pass him was by going off the track, and he lost 5-second penalty. But those are those undefinable, those abilities that some people have that make them very, very special, that create competitive advantage for the organization. Guys, here are some examples of technologies. The first one, your office technologies. It's running admin support. It's understanding the basic system, the intranet in an organization. Service technologies, you can see the example there, barcoded stock taking systems, and then CAD, computer aided drafting, in terms of manufacturing technologies. So when we look at technologies, I think there are a couple of things that you have to have in place to be a technology leader. First of all, you need to be cutting edge, and the advantages that gives you would be the idea of great profits. Also, I think having the right technologies will give you an opportunity to choose the right suppliers, to integrate supplier systems with yours. It allows you to attract those early adopters, and it also allows you to update your products in terms of late adopters. This is one of their favorite questions, and you're likely to see this question as well in the exam. It's normally about a 10, 11 mark question now. Organizational culture. Organizational culture is the personality of the organization. It is the way we do things around here. Now, when we see culture, we will be able to appreciate it, but it's very difficult to define. And the moment someone says that's the way we do things around here, you hear, and the person is describing culture. So when we think of what culture does, you have language that is unique to an organization. Varsity College loves acronyms. PAS, ICE. We were once given a laminated list of acronyms. It filled 2 A4 pages. I don't know what it all means. Folklore would be stories about people in the organization that made a difference. It's what happens when a group of employees sit together and reminisce, and they tell stories of when someone did this. And then heroes, those are people who, at a moment of crisis, stepped up and saved the organization. Symbols and rituals. If you look at the Googleplex, and you guys can look at this on your own, they have the little Android men, they have highly colorful balls all over the place. The design is something that's fresh and exciting and promotes creativity. Rituals would be things like what happens on a colleague's birthday. How do we celebrate those birthdays? How do we mourn the loss of someone? Those rituals are important. My son is finishing matric, and they have certain rituals. On the last day of their school, they leave their shoes behind for the shoes to go to underprivileged people. They will then go to their pump house. They'll jump off the pump house into the pool. It is their tradition. They, on the last day of school officially, before the exams, they have a painted shirt and they sign each other's shirts. Those traditions are important in creating culture. And then dress code. This year, Varsity College Pietermaritzburg has moved to the fact that we're allowed to wear jeans every day of the week. So I've started wearing jeans, and I've got lots of jeans, and I really look good in jeans. So I pack them. My skin tight blue jeans. I'm gonna get fired after that. Guys, and then the layout of offices. Is it open plan? How do we interact? Is it narrow little cubicles? If you ever get a chance, look at the Dilbert cartoons, Dilbert. If you want to see, that kind of layout. And then, yeah, when we see Shine's definition, it is one of the original and seminal definitions of culture. So the first one, it is the pattern of basic assumptions. We all have assumptions when we go to work. What is okay? What is appropriate? What's inappropriate? How do we interact? How do we speak to each other? Is it first name basis, etc.? I think the key thing is that culture starts with the founders. I mean, a wonderful example of that is Larry Page and Sergey Brin with Google, who created an organization they would like to work in. And that's how they started off, by creating the organizational culture for Google. The key thing about culture, it's part of allowing us to adapt, in particular in times of crisis. Culture includes elements of resilience. Culture includes elements of what do we do when the pawpaw has struck the fan. And then generally it develops over time, and we teach it to other people. And lastly, it really tells people what is appropriate in this organization in terms of your thinking, in terms of your behavior, in terms of your beliefs. Now, the way that it's defined there is that it comes across as positive, but sometimes organizations can have toxic cultures. I think if you imagine home affairs, it's for years had a toxic culture, but it appears to be changing that now, and it's becoming very efficient under their new minister. Guys, and then just in terms of how do we align culture with strategy? So again, a strategy supporting culture is essential. I think the first one, it allows us to align our behavior with the vision of the organization, with the goals of the organization. It also allows us to create teams that work together, that work on the basis that we are here to contribute to the greater good. Transformational leadership, the ability to create an organization where people want to make a significant difference, where we will update and change the organization essentially in terms of this. And then how we act interdependently, how marketing works with operations, how research development works with marketing. On the face of it, research development and marketing could never work together just on the basis of timeframes. Research and development thinks 5, 10, 20 years into the future. Marketing thinks now. What can we sell now? And how we create the environment where those work together. And then also allowing people to take charge of their lives at work, self-directed. And then also cultures tell us what gets rewarded. And then how do we deal with conflict? And just remember, as I said, the moment someone says to you, that's the way things are done here, that's how we do things, that is always going to be culture. So the computing values framework is an interesting model in that it depicts those key value dimensions that form part of culture. The first value dimension is focus. Now, in terms of focus, we look here at internal harmony, where it is about not rocking the boat, that it's about kumbaya around the table, around the fire. It's about unity, and it's about love, and it's about happiness, and it's about people getting along. It's a great idea for a country club. It's not a good idea for an organization. External competitiveness is a culture that says we get in the ring, we get in the faces of our competitors, we WWE with the best of them, and we throw them out of the ring. Okay, we are the John Cenas of the world. No, I don't want to do it. You can't see me. It's so pathetic, guys. Oh dear Lord, help me. And I'm being recorded. Somebody will listen to this and go, what the hell? You can't see me. Okay. Guys, and then the structure, flexibility, light on your feet, or is it about control? Is it about procedures and systems and policies that constrain and tick boxes and sometimes act in a bureaucratic fashion? And then means and ends. Means is where we focus on job descriptions, where we worry about how people actually work. Ends is about making sure that you make magic happen. So in modern organizations, they will say to you, I want you to build a product that does this. I don't care how you go about it. You decide how you make that happen. In traditional organizations, they'll give you a job description. And if you tick each of the boxes, you'll have certain achievements. I don't work in the first bit. I just want to be told what must be achieved, and I will do my own way. And that's an ends focus. And those give us different cultures, guys. So I think in terms of the first thing is to understand that culture is static, that it changes over time, and that culture is not always positive. So if we look at those components, and you can have a glance at this model yourself. So the opposites here, flexibility versus control, and then the internal focus about harmony, etc., or WWE, and get in the ring, provide differentiated, unique, in your face products that competitors will take note of. You'll remember that right at the beginning of the year, I said to you guys that when we create a strategic plan, I think it's Learning Unit 2, if I recall correctly, you get your vision, you get your mission statement. It might be Learning Unit 3, can't remember. And then next to your mission statement, you create your value statement. You'll also recall that I said when you write a mission statement properly, that mission statement would speak equally to each of your stakeholders. Your value statement is more explicit in talking to your stakeholders. So your value statement would talk about how we look after the interests of our stakeholders, shareholders looking after our fiduciary duties, customers impressing them, employees allowing them the opportunity to be fantastic, etc. So from a value perspective, when we've got that that value statement, my apologies, if we live each of those values perfectly as per the statement, we would have the ideal culture. So the value statement tells you what your ideal culture is. Unfortunately, in some organizations, the real culture is out of step with that value statement. And that's where changes are made to align people with the value statement. So the kinds of modern values that we expect from organizations, the first one is that there is a clear bias for action. So these aren't organizations that sit and talk about what they should do. They do. They make a difference. They create magic. Peterson talks about being beyond close to the customer. It is understanding your customers' needs and desires intimately, understanding what we can do to improve their lives. The next one is about autonomy. It's about empowering people and creating internal entrepreneurs. You'll recall I spoke about Google's 20% rule, where 20% of their engineers' lives belong to the engineers to create their own products. They can use the Google resources on condition that Google will benefit from the products they create. It's about people, and it's about people who are flexible, who are bright, who are learning, who are competent, who want to make a difference. And then leaders are hands-on. They drive those values. They walk the talk in terms of those stakeholders. Sticking to knitting is about your core business, understanding your core business, and staying with your core business. If we think of what Eskom and the disaster that they are, they moved away from their core business. At some point, they were under the Guptas, they were estate agents organizing the purchase of mines. They were banks lending money to the Guptas to go buy a mine to provide coal back to them at exorbitant rates. Let me not have my moment. Guys, and then just simple structure, flexible, light on its feet, and then the idea of loose and tight properties. Loose properties is about innovation. It's about free thinking, but staying within the broad understanding that we still maintain standards, that we still impress our customers, that we still have a vision. Yeah, this is the McKinsey 7S organizational architecture model. To just say again, guys, remember every architecture is unique to the organization. So this is not something you buy from a consultant as a theory out of a textbook and you plug it in. This has to be unique. This has to be customized, personalized to your own organization. There is the McKinsey framework, structural framework, architectural framework. In the middle, you will see it starts with your shared values. So your value statement, heck of important. We also know that your shared values are your culture, and ideally you want that culture to reflect the value statement that you have in your strategic objectives. The rest of this all has to be aligned with the shared values, but also has to be aligned with each other. So everything has to be in step with everything else. Everything has to be congruent. Everything has to make sense in terms of the rest of the system. So your structure, we spoke about the different structures, the key element there, flexibility. Your systems there in terms of policies and processes, also building in flexibility, but providing you those tight components in that loose, tight arrangement. Your leadership style, and then your staff and their abilities and the skills, and then the strategy. Now, it's not my favorite model, I'd have to admit, because I always think strategy sits on the side and everything aligns with it. But so imagine, though, that there's a change in strategy, that we are moving from low cost focus to a differentiation strategy. Immediately, your structure changes because you're now providing unique things. Your focus is on exclusivity, not just on quick generic turnover, low cost. So do your systems. The leadership style becomes focused on things other than efficiency. It's on effectiveness. Your staff have to change in their mindsets, because previously it was like save, 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 save. Now it's unique and special and stand out. Their skills have to change. The initial skills were about building cheaply. Now it's building about uniquely. And the values that sit in the middle drive all of these elements together. My last comment on this one, guys, this is a blueprint. You have to personalize that blueprint to your own organization. Every organization's architecture is unique to itself. You can't just have a model from a textbook and say, this is what we're using. Right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. That's also our last lecture, also our last bit in this program. Cheers.